Hello, winners, and welcome for Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. We have a treat for you today as we have a special guest on this Monday Mindset edition. But before we introduce Vic, please be sure to share, subscribe, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform. And want to give a shout out to Nick Menard and the 1% Push for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you, Nick Menard.
My pleasure. Hello, winners.
So, winners, we have a great guest to introduce to you today, Vic Martinez. Vic, thank you for coming on Two for the Win.
Nick, Will, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today and share and give some folks some of the insight that I've learned. And so I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I'm a veteran. I grew up down there in California, joined the military 17 years old. And what I thought was going to be a 4-year career turned into 28. Had a opportunity to travel all over the world, got stationed overseas, a couple of combat tours to Iraq, went to Afghanistan. And I actually retired 14 years ago. So now I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a writer. I'm writing a couple of books. And do a lot of speaking and an entrepreneur. So, yeah, glad to be here.
No, excited to have you. And yeah, with the Monday Mindset episode, we talk about leadership, mindset, entrepreneurship. So when we had the opportunity to meet, we're like, this is going to be a great match. And I think you're going to have just a ton to share to our listeners. So maybe we can start off with something like that. Like when you're thinking about making that transition, going from serving our country, thank you, by the way, for as long as you did, and then moving into entrepreneurship. Obviously, there's some differences, in how you're running your day to day. What was like one of the biggest appeals to you when you were first starting off into venturing into entrepreneurship, coming from working with the military?
Well, there's a number of things that caught my eye and drew my attention to entrepreneurship. I watch people leave the military, and after 28 years, some people will get out. They'll go get a job. They'll go to some job fair, get their resume tightened up, and then become an employee. The second thing they'll do is they'll go back to school. They'll pursue their degrees, use their GI Bill, get a degree, a diploma, put that on the resume, and get a job. But the third thing that I watch people do, a very few people, a hand select, was to pursue businesses, get into entrepreneurship. And those are the folks that I kind of respect and admire for going against the grain a little bit and going out to business for themselves. It's not always easy, but that's what I saw. And those are the guys that kind of got my attention.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And now that you've ventured into it, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what you're doing and how you like to spread the good word, so to speak, about mindset and leadership to others?
Well, I do a couple of things. I have an online business. I had a good friend of mine, also a Navy vet, that told me if you're going to get into business, the internet is key. As you know, the internet allows you to scale a business. It allows you to be very flexible. You can generate income 24/7. So I started an online business about 13 years ago. I got out of the military about 14 years ago. And so I do a lot of coaching. And then I also, because I do a lot of coaching in the business and with my military background, I started some executive coaching as well, some corporate coaching. And that's kind of the basis of my books that I'm writing on the transition from employee to entrepreneurship. And then the other book is the transition, maneuvering the minefield from mediocrity to mastery. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's kind of, where I decided to go into entrepreneurship and go into business for myself. And you can make your own schedule. You can be your own boss. You can determine how much money you make. The good thing about being in business for yourself, it's all up to you. And the bad thing about being in business for yourself, it's all up to you.
Absolutely. No, so it's very inspiring. When we talked, like last week a little bit about everything that you've been through and that you experienced in your life, it was very inspiring. But in the last 13 years, when you are coaching executives and even like people in different companies, what are the couple of things that come up a lot that you are able to help thanks to your experience in the military?
Well, there's a lot of lessons, a lot of parallels with the military that you can apply into business. You have got to be organized. The military helped us to be organized. You have to have discipline. Again, like I said, if you own a business, it's all up to you. So you have to have some self-discipline to manage your time, to be prepared. In the military, we do a lot of training. You prepare for combat by doing training. And if you're going to build a business, you've got to prepare. You've got to do some research. You've got to crack some books. You've got to study other entrepreneurs, other businesses. And so there's a lot of parallels in there that I just took on from the military into business. And that's kind of what I just share with folks. You only have 24 hours. You've got to maximize that time. Organize your calendars. And time is something that I talk with a lot of people because it's a limited resource. We only have 24 hours in a day, and yet everybody has the same amount of time. And why are some other people more productive than others? So, but yeah, there's a lot of parallels from the military that I use into business.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now for the audience, so they understand, I know you've been in the military like for a while. You mentioned 20 plus years. Can you give a little summary of the different place you've been rank wise, so people can understand your evolution from starting in military to going to leadership and lead a large group of people across not only the country but overseas as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I went in straight out of high school. The military always fascinated me. My mom always said I was going to join the military. And sure enough, I was 17 years old. She signed the paperwork for me. And then right after high school, I left. And I became in the military, in the Army, what they call a 13 Bravo, which is in a field artilleryman. And so I started out in the field artillery. I was a cannoneer. And it was a combat arm. So it's a combat job, obviously shooting 155 millimeter cannons. And so I just worked my way up. I started out as a cannoneer, then became a section chief where I was responsible for a howitzer crew with about a dozen guys, and then went up to platoon. Then I became a first sergeant where I had a battery, and then eventually worked my way up to a battalion with about 500 men and women, then to a brigade which had over 5,000. From 500 in the battalion to 5,000 in the brigade. And then ultimately, my last job, I ran a military base with about 19,000 men.
Wow. And how did you realize that you had something special about leadership, that you are able to, impact people by being yourself and by the message that you are able to share? Can you share that? Because the audience are all about understanding how to become a leader, or if they are a leader, how to get better in leadership. So I think it's very interesting in your journey and how you went through the ranks, from really starting to have like thousands of people in your units, understanding the mindset of it, and how did you really progress that way?
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes people ask the question, are leaders born or are leaders made? And leaders are made. I was not a leader in the beginning, but I was groomed, and people saw potential in me. I had great leaders that are mentors that to this day I still keep in contact with. Some of those retired generals that helped me prepare me, other senior enlisted NCOs, non-commissioned officers. So my title when I retired was the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Commanding General. So I was basically the Commanding General's right-hand guy. But I had a lot of senior leaders over the years that helped me to prepare for the next level. I say that my claim to fame is I had mentors. If anybody wants to grow, if anybody wants to excel, to bypass that learning curve, you want to find a mentor. You want to find a coach. And I was very blessed that I had some great leaders, great examples that helped me along the way and encouraged me, hey, this is the next school that you should be looking at. This is the next position you should be aiming to get. And so, mentorship was absolutely vital in getting to where I was at.
Oh, that's phenomenal. And when you reflect back, because I agree, having a mentor is really critical for a variety of reasons. If nothing else, you got somebody as a trusted advisor you can lean on, especially when there's opportunities. But was there a particular lesson that your mentor shared with you that kind of not only sticks with you, but kind of shaped as you move forward in your career?
Gosh, there's so many lessons. I think one of them that really impacted me, and this individual went on to become a retired 4-star general. But I was about to retire from the military after 22 years when he asked me when we were in Iraq. He said, "What are you going to do when we come back, Sergeant Major?" And I said, "I'm going to drop retirement. I've got 20 plus years. I'm good." And then he's the one who said, "I'd like you to become the next brigade sergeant major." So that's when I went from 500 to 5,000. And his name is Robert Brown, Bob Brown. And he was big on reading. He always said leaders are readers. And so books are absolutely vital in anybody's personal development. And so I really advocate that to folks. I say the two things that's going to determine your future are the books you read and who you hang out with. But I think one of the biggest impactful things that general had told me back then, he was a colonel. He said, you got to crack some books. Books are absolutely key. So.
That's excellent. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because we had a podcast episode not that long ago where we talked about some of the leadership books that influenced us. Is there a few that come to mind for you that really stand out about leadership or mindset, or maybe it's something different that really helped inspire you?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I've read a lot of books. One author that was instrumental for me in my military career was John Maxwell. Huh. And John Maxwell, obviously, he's the number one leadership guru in the world. I started reading his books at a very early age, in my 20s, right about when I was a platoon sergeant. And then that just helped me to excel where I was at. But John Maxwell was absolutely instrumental in my military career. And to this day, I see him in a conference every single year. But there's just so many books. The Magic of Thinking Big was another one of my favorite books. The Magic of Thinking Big.
Yeah.
And obviously everything starts with how you think. Think and Grow Rich. As a man thinketh, you can if you think you can. So I like books that talk about our mindset. Yeah, for sure.
I love it. I mean, what I love about having like guests like yourself who have a great career and experience and continue to spread the message of mindset and leadership is that basically the message is always the same. So the secret is to not keep it secret and continue to learn and have a never ending, like learning curve. And you mentioned mentorship, which is something we preach on this channel all the time. You mentioned Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. It's funny because, like Will mentioned, that was my number one book when we talk about leadership book. Yeah. So it's amazing that the stories are always the same. So when people ask the same question over and over again, which is what we do with our guests, we have all the time the 2-3 same answer. So there is no secret. Just do it. Just read books, have a mentor, and no limit mindset. And surround yourself with people that you inspire to become or to be helped from. If you are the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, you're the next one. And I think that it's phenomenal to continue to hear the same message. So can you tell us a little bit more about the books? You mentioned that you are writing 2 books. You mentioned the title a little bit. I love both of them, but the second one you mentioned about how to go from where you are to mastery.
I love that.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that book or even the other one, and understand where you want to go with this? Is just to inspire more people, or is there a specific reason why you want to be publishing those books?
Yes. Well, having made the transition from the military to business, I always encourage veterans, go into business for yourself. You're a multi-million-dollar creation. The skill set and the mindset that we have been developed in the military, you can totally apply it into business. So that was the beginning. My first book that I started writing was Maneuvering the Minefield from Employment to Entrepreneurship. And I didn't want to limit it just to veterans. So I didn't just put veterans. I opened it up to everybody because there's a lot of people today, especially we live in a world where there's no better time to go into business for yourself. Mm-hmm. And so I began writing that book. But then as far as I get a lot of requests for coaching. And so people want to take their careers or life to another level. And another one of my favorite books is An Enemy Called Average. And God didn't make us to be average. So anyways, I had this idea that lined up for the other book. So that's the one I'm really focusing on right now, is helping people. And the title is Maneuvering Through the Minefield from Mediocrity to Mastery. Because you've got to develop those habits. And I think nobody wants to be average. I think everybody wants to take their game to another level. So I've written out a number of chapters of, different obstacles that we may encounter when we're growing, culture, being comfortable. My first chapter was talking about comfort. And so there's a lot of different things, obstacles that we have to overcome in order to get to mastery. And like I said, the very first one I talked about was being comfortable. In the military, I used to tell people, if you want to become comfortable, you're going to become a casualty. And so we can't do that. We've got to be uncomfortable. And again, you've heard this before. You got to become uncomfortable. You got to become comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, absolutely. No, for sure. And as you're coaching like various executives, you mentioned earlier, a lot of them need help with time management, some with structure and process. But maybe you have a scenario, not asking you to name names, of course, but where you worked with somebody who maybe was kind of a glass half empty type and needed a little mindset cleansing, so to speak. And what was like some of your guidance in that situation to hopefully get them to turn it around?
Well, I have there's so many examples right now. I think about mindset and really pushing somebody, encouraging, bringing out the best in people. I have to remember a young man who came to my unit as a sergeant first class. He was basically at the platoon sergeant level. And basically he was close to retirement. So he just said, yeah, I don't think I've had the right positions. I don't think I'm going to make the next rank. So if you could just put me in this position, I'm just going to write out my retirement. And I said, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to stretch you. And I put him actually in a first sergeant position where he was in charge of over 100, probably about 150 men at that time. And then he excelled and he blossomed. And right about when he was getting ready to just find a cushy job and just ride out his retirement, I stretched him, I challenged him, and I helped him change his thinking. And not only did he went on to make E8, he also went on to make E9. And he retired as a sergeant major. And he's one of the guys that I still keep in contact. And he says, thank you for stretching me and making me really, not go down that easy path. And sometimes if you want to take the easy road, later on down the road, things will be hard. Jim Rohn has that saying, if you want your life to be hard, then do what's easy, So.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I love the fact that, one of the things about leadership is, can you inspire somebody to do something they wouldn't otherwise do on their own? And that's a great example of that, where you challenged him in a positive way to stretch him, and then he flourished in that situation. That's fantastic. Are there other leadership principles? Like you mentioned several already, but just want to make sure, if there's anything you want to share with our listeners. Are there other leadership principles that you consistently teach others as kind of like tenets of your approach of how to go about leading and developing others?
Well, yeah, leadership. I just tell folks, if you want to be good at anything, you got to study, you got to prepare. If you want to be a good leader, you also got to be a good follower. You got to be a good student. And so I just tell folks, never stop learning. We don't know everything, and that's why it's so important to crack books and listen to podcasts and TED Talks and other things that you can grow. And I know, like behind you guys, you got the growth mindset, and it's so important to have that growth mindset. My wife and I were talking about that today, and the fact that if you think you know it all, then you have that fixed mindset. So, my biggest encouragement to folks is to continue to develop your mindset, your mentality. Another good book that I read says, we have to renew ourselves. The renewing of our mind is so important. And so, that's probably one of my biggest takeaways. You've got to be reading, studying, learning something every single day if you want to grow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've had a situation, and I'm also, I have certain habits that I follow, but every once in a while I get off track, right? And I had a situation, as like a couple months ago, had some different things happening. I wasn't listening or reading before I went to sleep at night, to different things. I wasn't waking up and starting that. And it's funny. It's almost like a muscle. If you don't work out, all of a sudden it starts to atrophy a bit. And I found that I was starting to get bothered by things that normally I wouldn't get bothered by. So I'm just curious, like in your case, Vic, when you've had a situation where maybe things, you're not quite full center, you're off a little bit. Like, what are some of the things that you do to get yourself back on track and get on the right road?
Well, we're surrounded by so much negativity that it's so important to dilute that with some positivity. So, to get back on track, I love to listen to something that's inspirational, an audio book or a podcast or something on YouTube that's going to inspire me. If I feel I'm off track, I'm going to put something good in my brain to get me back on track and dilute that. So again, it starts right with our thinking. So that's huge for me.
So in other words, you don't sit in front of the TV, binge watch shows for 8 hours and eat a tub of ice cream. You actually like feed your brain.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. My mindset is if I'm not where I want to be, what the heck am I doing watching Yellowstone for?
Yeah. Oh, right.
I've got to crack a book and there's things that I want to accomplish, things that I want to achieve, and it's the same thing. If I want to be fit, what am I doing sitting on the couch? I need to get up and do something. And so you have to have a call to action, and you have to know what is it that you want to accomplish. You have to begin with the end in mind and your clear goals. And if your goals aren't achieved, then you can't be distracted. Like I said earlier, there's never been a better time to go into business for yourself. A lot of people I think I heard a statistic, over 80% of Americans have a side hustle. People want to get into business. They want to get into entrepreneurship. And so it's just so important to take action toward that.
Absolutely. And again, and I will piggyback for something you said about when someone told you, just put me there so I can retire. And the fact that you challenge that person and, you part of the reason why that person is where he is right now today. So retire, but a lot higher than what he was. That's, for me, it's always the reason when people ask me why you're doing that. It's those stories that's actually what stick, because that's something that's an impact that you had by doing a little, 1% push, like I like to call, to make someone change for a little their thinking and make them do something that maybe they didn't like hear from you when you gave it that answer. But that make a total difference in the life of the person. I love that. And I'm very thankful to have a couple of stories like that as well. And it makes total a difference. And it makes you actually continue to be willing to do what you do. Why? Because you remember those few stories that you may have that keep you motivated to continue doing it, because maybe there is another person around the corner that you're going to impact. And that's the reason why we write books. That's the reason why we continue to spread the message. We do the podcast and others. So great. You mentioned that you have other goals that you want to achieve. I'm pretty sure as an entrepreneur, when you achieve that goal, you will have another one, because it's never ending. And that's the mindset of an entrepreneur. We never satisfy and say, all right, I'm done, because you always have more inspiration. I know you are going to publish your books. Anything else that you really, really have a target, like it's on your dream board or on your goal board, that you absolutely want to achieve the next year or 2 years?
Well, I want to help as many people make that shift from employment to entrepreneurship and really build successful businesses that's going to be able to, businesses exist to solve problems, to help people to live better lives. And so I think if I can help more people, end the rat race and get into entrepreneurship and solve people's problems, I tell you, it's very rewarding, because I've seen a lot of people. I've been able to help a number of people already do that, and they've already have shifted from that mindset, from that day-to-day employee mindset to I'm my own boss. I'm going to go out there and make a difference. So my biggest goal is just to continue to make a difference. Not only, a lot of people can make money, but it's also very important to make a difference, to make an impact. And I think it's really, it will come naturally. The more people you impact, I think of Earl Nightingale. I think Earl Nightingale says, our reward in life will be in direct proportion to our contribution in society. And so the more people that we can impact, the money's going to come. So I just want to continue to impact people. Yeah.
I love it. Love it. So it's a never ending story, and it's great. It's great. I have one more question for you about, during your time in the army. I'm pretty sure in the military. You probably have tons, but the accomplishment that you made that you are the most proud of during your whole career in the military?
Well, one of the things I when I was stationed in Germany back in the 1900s, right? I remember looking at in the headquarters building, where you had pictures of all the leaders, of all the generals. And then I noticed that all the senior enlisted guys, all the sergeant majors had one thing in common. And it was that they all were drill sergeants. And so I said, I want to follow that path. And I became a drill sergeant. It was probably one of the most rewarding jobs that I had in the military. So that was a huge accomplishment. But I think ultimately reaching the rank of command sergeant major, you're the top of the top. And then there's different levels. Once you reach that rank, you've reached the highest rank, but then there's different levels of responsibility. So you can be in charge of a battalion, then a brigade, then a division, then a corps. And so ultimately to make it to the level that I did, what they call a nominative sergeant major, young kid growing up in East LA, joining the military, to do that, it was something that I was humbled to reach that level. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you again for your service. I know Will mentioned in the beginning, but thank you. We need more like you. So thank you.
So my last question is one of my, it's an easy one for me, but is there a question we haven't asked you yet, Vic, that you wanted us to ask, or something you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap up today's episode?
Gosh. No, not really. You guys had some great questions. You really did. And I think I guess one other question is setbacks. You're always going to have setbacks. Sometimes people ask me questions about, well, how do you deal with setbacks? And I think setbacks are what comebacks are made of. And so I think for anybody, no matter what you're going through, I think you're going to go through trials. That's life. Life is not fair. But take that setback and get up, dust yourself off, and keep on moving forward. If you're going through hell, don't stop. Keep going. So just understand that life's not fair. Setbacks are going to happen, trials, and you just got to persevere.
Yeah, I love that. And by the way, I love that quote. Setbacks is what's needed for comebacks. That's phenomenal. But, a lot of times it's about perseverance, right? Like sometimes it's not about who's the most talented or who's the most connected. Sometimes it's just staying the course and being steadfast and having that grit and resolve that as long as you keep moving forward, you're never going to be stopped. You'll always have that. So really appreciate that and great words of wisdom, Vic. So
I think we could rename our podcast "Three for the Win." Seriously, every time you say something, I'm laughing, or I look at Will and I'm like, oh my God, that's the kind of answer we give, or that's the kind of message we want to pass. So thank you so much for your wisdom and your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for what you guys are doing. You guys are making a big difference, impacting with your podcast. So continue doing that.
Yeah, many thanks, Vic. So winners, that'll do it. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did chatting with Vic. You can find his LinkedIn profile in the description. Be on the lookout. Check him out. And again, executive coaching, speaking opportunities, and be on the lookout for his books to be published later on this year. Really appreciate, lots of gratitude for Vic joining us today. So winners, please be sure to share, subscribe, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform. Thanks again to nickmenard.com and the 1% Push for sponsoring today's episode. That'll wrap us up for today. We'll see you next week, winners.
Bye, winners.